Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of interesting things happening in the AI race. Sam Altman is actually sounding the alarm internally over OpenAI's standing after Google releases their latest LLM. So that is a fascinating one there. The Trump administration announced they had a healthcare proposal, and then they pulled that healthcare proposal after a revolt from congressional Republicans. We'll dig into that. Scott Bessent says maybe the way to bring costs down is to invade Venezuela. Seems to be a full-blown propaganda push towards war and a full-on invasion of Venezuela. So we will see where that goes. Republicans in the House are furious, apparently, with the White House, and more are threatening to resign, putting the majority in danger. Jim Comey and Letitia James have had their prosecutions thrown out by a federal judge. Pete Hegseth is threatening Mark Kelly after he was part of that video saying, hey, if you are a service member, you should not follow unlawful commands. And we're going to take a look at what that Thanksgiving turkey is going to cost you. This is our most morning show coded segment ever. We do it every year, though. We usually also do one about how to talk to your relatives about Thanksgiving, but whatever. You're just gonna have to work that one out for yourself.
At this point, there's been enough discourse about relatives. You guys can figure it out, okay?
I actually, you know what? Let me offer one tip, one unifying thing. I think you should talk about data centers and AI, and I think you should.
There you go. That's smart.
Because it's very cross-partisan. I think there is something about the rise of AI for all of us to be concerned about. So perhaps it can be both an educational and a unifying moment at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
I like that. That's the Breaking Points approved talking point that you can have politics at dinner, and everybody will say, wow, that's crazy. We should do something about that. I like it.
Indeed.
Thank you to everybody who's been signing up breakingpoints.com to become a premium subscriber. You can, especially today, you're going to want to be a premium subscriber. You know why? Because during the AMA, Krystal is at home. So producer Mac is going to join me, and we are going to taste test live the Taco Bell Baja Blast. Is it a cheesecake or is it a pie? It's one of those.
It's
Emily,
it's a cheesecake.
It's a cheesecake. The Baja Blast.
It's an interesting question whether a cheesecake is also technically a pie.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, yes.
That's
Emily decided that this was something that we should give a whirl. So she is
Emily
gifting
has Uber Eats it to the
Saagar
studio, and we are going to try it live on camera. Only available for our premium subscribers, breakingpoints.com. You can also support our work, by the way. And if you're just watching this on YouTube, no worries, you can't afford a membership. Please just hit subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listening to this as a podcast, rate us 5 stars, and send it to a friend. It really helps other people find the show. But let's go ahead and start with the economy. As we said, let's go ahead and put A1 up here on the screen. This new rollout is absolutely fascinating simply because we can look at the exponential growth in a lot of these LLMs between Google, Meta, OpenAI, Amazon, Dropbox, all these other companies, Salesforce. People are all competing against one another. And Google's new Gemini rollout has many of its competitors reeling. And the implications for this are actually titanic, mostly for OpenAI, but also for the entire chips industry. So let's read a little bit here from the Wall Street Journal. With the release of the third version this week, Google's Gemini LLM surged past ChatGPT has become the most capable AI chatbot as determined by consensus industry benchmark tests. The reason why this is interesting is that Google has been able to do this by bypassing some of the other choke points that OpenAI has had, and because it is a monopolistic company. I mean, the truth is the vast majority of people who are even watching this are doing so on a Google product. They're doing it on YouTube. Google has YouTube, it has AI search, it has YouTube TV, it has all of these different things that roll up into this gigantic company which prints all of this money. They don't have to have the shortfall that OpenAI has, some $78 billion in losses. They've been able to come in, have this technological breakthrough with Gemini 3, which has, quote, outperformed competing models on more than a dozen benchmark tests, scoring a range of intelligence categories. But I think what's also very interesting is the chip story, Krystal, behind all of this, the way that they're using their own, the way that they're not having to rely on some of these more vendor finance type deals. And so that puts at risk kind of the pyramid scheme, potentially, that we had begun to see with OpenAI and many of the other deals that they had out there. This has major ramifications for the future of OpenAI, its ability to fulfill its trillion-dollar commitments if they can't maintain their technological edge.
Yeah, this is a gigantic deal for a bunch of reasons and a tremendous threat to the other AI competitors. For the first time, Google has been seen to take the lead in terms of the AI race, as you were saying, on these sort of benchmark tests. It outperformed all of the competitors on every single test save for one. So it's sort of widely being seen as the most advanced model at this point. The other reason, as you were saying, Saagar, that this is considered so significant is that Google has their own proprietary chips that were used to train Gemini 3, and Gemini 3 is largely being run on those proprietary chips. So that is really, a significant sort of shakeup in the industry and could potentially give them an edge as well. Not to mention, as you said, the fact, and this is something Matt Stoller has been all over, the fact that they have this gigantic monopoly already gives them a huge edge as well, both in terms of customer positioning and also in terms of the data that they have available to train these models. And the training, obviously, very important in terms of LLMs, because it's not like normal tech where you code it. It's actually, being trained, it's being grown. And so the more that you have to feed into this thing from everybody's searches and all of the content on the web, that's going to give you an advantage as well. To give you a sense of how significant the chips aspect of this is and how central NVIDIA has become, let's put A2 up on the screen. I don't know if you guys followed all this drama last week about NVIDIA's earnings. They did actually exceed their earnings expectations. And their founder said, I think quite accurately, the whole world would have fallen apart if NVIDIA missed earnings expectations, because basically our entire economy is centered around that one now infamous chart of NVIDIA and all the deals they have with all these different AI companies. So NVIDIA has been like the central player. This maybe breaks apart that notion that NVIDIA is absolutely everything within the economy. But yeah, we're still in this situation where things are incredibly concentrated. And for these other companies that are taking gigantic $trillion bets on their model winning, this has got to be incredibly unsettling.
Yeah, exactly. The chips angle to this, the OpenAI angle, and also just the monopolistic one. And I think this is the one I want to spend more time on, because it's not just search, it's Google Chrome, it's Gmail, it's YouTube. Google had already built, the perfect search engine, the perfect YouTube recommendation. The truth is like we owe our careers, right, to YouTube recommendation algorithm. A lot of other people do. You go on YouTube and it's the best at being able to find something else that you want to watch. Now, YouTube TV is one of the major players in the cable replacement space. They've got all this stuff going on with culture. They own all these massive troves of data. You have the Android operating system, which is global. So they know more about human behavior than anyone else already before LLMs. And then you roll that all up into Sundar Pichai, who apparently made this the single priority inside of Google very recently. I was reading some background from my friend Alex Kantrowitz. He's a tech reporter on how they revamped the Gemini product, and they said this will be the preeminent one in the space. So it shows the monopolistic benefits to a Google, and it also shows you some of the dangers here with OpenAI specifically, and what that means for our overall economy. And that's probably what we want to spend the most time on here. Let's go to A3. I flagged this specifically because it goes back to our interview that we did last week, specifically about when will we know that we're going to start having issues with AI in terms of it starting to leapfrog. Google is actually having Gemini build the user interface in its latest Gemini update. So the AI is already doing some of the tasks around the AI itself. This is what I say is super interesting, I think, about how they're not only having the monopoly to benefit its current product, but now having the AI not just train the AI, but build some of the user interface of AI. So it demonstrates what they have long promised as the productivity benefits, again, for themselves, not necessarily for all of us. Now, with OpenAI, what Wall Street is beginning to notice, and you're going to start probably seeing this in stock price soon, is how much this kind of screws over a lot of their growth plans. So let's put the next one up here on the screen. So this was from CNBC, and what they say is that Google's new AI model puts OpenAI, the great conundrum of this market, on shakier ground. I do want to say this was written by Jim Cramer, so, take it with a grain of salt. That said, every once in a while, broken clock is right twice a day. And what he does say is that if you look at this, in some of the promises of the market, specifically around these vendor finance deals and OpenAI, while openly acknowledging that they're going to have some $78 billion or whatever in losses by 2028, everything is built on exponential growth and their ability to maintain the leading and bleeding edge for exponential growth, the best in consumer-facing AI. What this does makes it is so that it calls into question their competitive edge that they've long had by being one of the first movers with one of the best user-friendly chatbots. And it makes it so that that could be challenged, which would decrease its growth, which would, of course, not have them be able to fulfill all of the trillion-dollar deals, which would mean that the market valuations of all these companies, save for Google, would start to go down, and NVIDIA in particular. Go to the next one, please. This is from The Information, a tech-focused outlet, and they got their hands on this new memo that forecasts, quote, rough vibes due to a resurgent Google. Now, I don't love using the word rough vibes in internal company memos, but what we say is that this November memo, it leaked a couple of days ago, says that the rough vibes and potential revenue growth toward 5%, which would be a collapse inside. And that was actually written before Gemini 3 actually launched on November 18th. Altman praised Google's excellent work, where he declared a shift to a wartime footing inside of the company. Now remember, they're valued at $500 billion. Their annual revenue needs to exceed some $20 billion this year. Their cash burn surpasses already $8 billion in 2025. Cumulative losses of $115 billion, potentially up to 2029. Forward sales need some 25 times now currently. Meanwhile, Google has $100 billion in cash. They have 4 billion users. They have an incredible competitive edge. And so you could see very quickly how this company, even if it maintains, some good growth and it continues to have, large user base, 20 billion and all that, it's going to be very, very hard to reach some 25 times expected growth and keep that exponential edge. And this is really what all these AI guys, people like Meta and Google, have been kind of telling everyone behind the scenes. They're like, yeah, look, OpenAI is great, but we actually make money. We make a shitload of money. And we have this monopolization, let's say in social media and or in Google search, and we can use that to prop up our trillions of dollars that are being spent here. OpenAI is kind of the cornerstone of a lot of the stock growth for some of the other, areas like data center, NVIDIA, and others. And I think that's where a lot of the concern comes from a potential collapse, at the very least, from OpenAI. That wouldn't bring down the entire economy, but would pump the brakes. And pumping the brakes, as we've said, is potential enough to already see a major decline in a lot of stock indices, and potentially also even a modest decrease in the amount of data center growth would mean that GDP itself would begin to put us into recession territory.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Let's put A6 up on the screen. Actually, David Sachs was saying yesterday something to the effect, which I found very disturbing, frankly, that we have so many chips placed on the AI boom that we cannot go back. We cannot afford it to slip. And that's what this article really reveals. It says the S&P 493 reveals a very different U.S. economy. So we've seen the stock market go basically up and up and up and up and up, breaking new records, et cetera. And we've mentioned this before, but if you strip out those 7 companies, the Magnificent Seven, that are all, sky high valuations, basically based on the promise of AI. If you take that out, the stock market picture the picture of growth is very actually weak. It looks like a completely different economy. And of course, for most people out there, who are living in the real economy, they're already feeling a downturn. They're already feeling the pinch. They're not participating in this speculative fever, or certainly not mostly benefiting from the speculative fever, unless you're someone who's at the higher end of the income spectrum and benefiting from the rise in the stock market. But one possibility, Saagar, that we've been talking about for a while is, the expectation is that the AI boom is going to be a sort of winner-take-all economy. And I mean that in the sense that whichever company is able to achieve super intelligence first and get to this pivot point where their AI is not only training the new AI, but is also doing significant decision making, where basically everything is sort of handed off and you just have humans who are overseeing the best they can, managing this development. Whoever achieves that first is going to basically get all of the gains. So you can have a situation where the promise of AI is actually fulfilled. Now, I'm sort of terrified of what that world looks like, but if you're a techno optimist, there could be a world where the promise of AI is fulfilled, but still all of these other companies that are betting, making trillion-dollar bets on their AI future lose the race, and you still have a massive crash and bubble pop once someone does actually achieve that level of super intelligence. And so to me, this development is a reminder that even, with the structure of the way this AI race is playing out, that in and of itself creates massive risk in the economy, because you are probably going to have basically a monopolistic winner take all situation where, whether it's Google, and I do think Google, it makes sense that they have a lot of advantages here, whether it's Google or some other player, when they achieve this breakthrough, they're going to leapfrog far beyond everyone else and, cause a major cratering of the valuation and the bets of these other companies. Now, if you're a company like Microsoft, you've got a lot of other revenue streams. If you're a company like OpenAI, you've placed all of your chips on, trying to get to super intelligence as quickly as possible and spending as much money as it takes and becoming too big to fail. That's basically where you've placed all of your chips. Now, we should say at this point, they are the leaders in terms of, the largest user base of their LLM. ChatGPT is the most used. I think they have like 800,000 users, something like that. So they're ahead in that perspective. But, I think this really shows a lot of risks for their direction and their business model.
Yeah, I mean, what you can see at the very least here is with questions and uncertainty, that enough is because of where the markets and how it's all worked would be enough to bring down some sort of downturn, which again, we have to keep underscoring, is the only thing propping up the US economy in terms of the big numbers that people in Washington care about, GDP and stock market. Now, I know the vast majority of people watching this, that doesn't affect you all that much. Although I would say it does affect you in the way that interest rates work, in terms of if there is a crash, you can be sure you may not have benefited on the way up. You definitely will suffer the consequences on the way down. It can, liquidity. There's all kinds of downstream things. But I think just to hammer this home, this Washington Post has a graphic, A6 please. So the S&P 493, and what it shows is that 132% growth, excluding the Magnificent Seven, since 2019. Whereas from 2025, it's 1,057%, which includes the Magnificent Seven. People don't appreciate just how powerful these companies have been to the illusion, let's say, of growth. And if the 493 of the 500 companies are not actually doing all that well, although, it's not, I'm not saying that they haven't done as well, but they're not, compounding at a level which is so exponential, that alone just demonstrates some of the pushback, the draw that could happen with some of those valuations. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.